This is your daily briefing. You're most welcome to it. Sorry, but not sorry. Because if there isn't anything we can legitimately get our teeth into, then you won't hear from me. I do not have a schedule. I do not have somebody stood over me saying, oh, you've got to post 8 articles a day. Oh, you've got to make 4 videos a week. Doesn't happen because you can't operate like that, not if you're a grown-up. So if you've been enjoying other people's content in the meantime, well, hey, you've had a result. But I just don't have it in me, okay? I really don't. I want to talk to you today. Transfer window's come to a little bit of an impasse. We're halfway through the friendlies. Everything's going pretty much tickety-boo. It's an unusual window that Daniel Levy has been he's still in post whilst there's been so much business has taken place. All bar one of our transfers boarded the flight to South Korea. And that told us, reminded us, reinforced the suggestion to us that the reality of the situation is that Daniel Levy is still driving the bus. But unlike previous situations, Antonio Conte is in the passenger seat. He's not in the back of the car, the back of the bus. He's not in the car following the bus, as Pochettino and others have been in the past. So things have improved undoubtedly, but Jed Spence was not a Conte buy. And I noticed, listen, I'll try and stay on the leash here, but Gold came out with a thing, oh, I was told he's handing him here. 3 people have told me so far. I don't care. If we go back, and I'm not going to do it, you'll be pleased to hear, because I trailed it on last time, but if we go back through the Conte quote on Jed Spence, it was a club decision. The bit where he said, I said okay, that's a lesser weight in the argument than it was a club decision. Obviously Conte's part of the club, I understand that, but I also understand how Tottenham works, and I've been here longer than Conte's been at Spurs, and I might suggest that I've been here longer than some reporters have been at Spurs or covering Spurs. So what's my beef today? My beef today is that this transfer window has been comparatively exceptional, but my concern is that it could end not in tears but in regret, and it's in one specific area that I want to look at with you today. It may sound a little needy even suggesting that, because Spurs have broken the habit of a lifetime and got plenty of business done early, but the most crucial signing of all, in my opinion, has so far eluded us. With any top flight side, there will be trade-offs, there will be compromises, even with the likes of Manchester City, although you would perhaps have to be somewhat eagle-eyed to spot those trade-offs there. For Spurs, who have effectively neglected to operate wholly as an actual football club for the last 2 decades, the effect a genuine new broom can and will have will always be limited. And I have to remind us all of the deficit that Antonio Conte walked into. You'll remember his opening gambit. He was going to assess the existing squad. Yeah, sure, most managers, most coaches would say that, but most coaches wouldn't walk into a top flight club with £1 billion stadium with so many old players on the books. That just doesn't happen. If you look at who we've bought and who remains at Hotspur Way from the existing squad, then the glaring conclusion is that Spurs are a bit thin in the middle of the park. And I draw your attention to the middle of the park. Winks, Hojbjerg, Skipp, Bentancur, all defensive-leaning holding types of midfielders. And if we then go down the route, and I'm going to come back to this, and we sort of blip, either way, but bear with me because I'm trying to address a pretty sort of nebulous argument from a lot of, not just Levy apologists, but fans generally. So what if he's just going to use the wing-backs? You don't understand how he's got the team set up. Well, I think I do. Emerson Royal's crossing accuracy in the Premier League last season was just 30.5%. So let me put that into baby language for you, okay? Because listen, I agree that Emerson is improved. Only the most churlish, snappy fool would say, no, he's just rubbish. He has improved, but he was at such a low ebb when he first joined us that improvement hasn't been seismic. And it's certainly nothing to build a team around. Sergio Reguilon's accuracy in the same discipline was 32.9%, which is only a couple of percent better, but defensively he's actually worse than Emerson Royal. So enter stage left and stage right, Bentancur and Bissouma. Arguably more penetrative characters, but truth be told, neither have anything in their numbers to make a case for them lifting the burden attack-wise. And if you look at the heat maps, let's just bring up Bissouma's heat map here. That'll give you a good indication. Last season, Bissouma produced 1 assist. The one fragment of hope that we might find here is with Bentancur, whose career assist rate is appalling. I mean, really, like he doesn't make them. But last season he made 4 in a Spurs shirt, and this is where we're coming on to the part of the show that I really repulses me the most, where fans then, because there's nothing lateral, there's nothing tangible, there's nothing normal or grown up or adult, they start thinking. The beginning of all sorrows. Please don't think, don't imagine, don't conjure up, don't fantasize scenarios. They do us no good. Oh yeah, but you know, with Richarlison, if he comes to Spurs, he'll be amazing. Yeah, look, I know that in pre-seasons we're not looking for much, we're just looking for very basic indicators of fitness and awareness and stamina and all that sort of stuff. But so far, with Richarlison, we're seeing the same player that we saw on Merseyside. Identical. When we come back to Bentancur then, and we say, oh, well, he made 4 assists last season, and ordinarily he's a bit allergic to the old assist game, but Conte seems to be doing it. We then find ourselves pinning our hopes on Conte reinvented players like Victor Moses, didn't he? And listen, I don't want to be nasty, but I have to be nasty because I need to stamp this sort of stuff out. These are the inventions of children. We've got 2 other scenarios, excuses that would be peddled here. Harry Kane has reinvented himself. And this was an inspirational move from Jose Mourinho, although very few of you who hate Jose are prepared to accept it was his strategy. But it came up with the idea of this business of Kane dropping into the centre circle, pinging the long ball, the telepathic passes to Sonny and Kulusevski, whoever else was kicking around. But that's going to become a more rarer sight the more frequently it's deployed. People become aware of strategies and they acclimatise and they accommodate against them. Conte prefers wing-backs. He doesn't need a midfield. Ambitious, to put it mildly, but it has marginally more credence to it. But the problem here is, and the reason is, if this were to subsidise the situation with the midfield, then you'd need wing backs that weren't substandard. And here we have this plethora, this embarrassment of impoverishment opposed to riches, where we've got Reguilon, who isn't a great wing back, Emerson, who isn't a great wing back, Matt Doherty isn't a great wing back, and this is the other thing. And another thing, but this is another thing, that Doherty's been out for a while and he's now, his imminent return is being hailed as, well, Doherty's actually, he was improving. It was bloody awful. That's where he was, that's where the line was. So anything above bloody awful was seen as good. And my fear is that people are expecting Oliver Skipp to suddenly turn into something extraordinary. He was never extraordinary. He was good. He was interesting, but he was never extraordinary. This is a guy with 1 full season for Norwich City under his belt. They got relegated because they weren't very good, and they said, and probably they were right, that he was their best player. And this is what niggles me. So we've got this whole thing, this whole, pandering, these excuses, these endless explanations as to why things aren't right, but they can kind of muddle through. We can mend and make do. But we're supposedly this financial behemoth. And the 150 million, I'll come back to that later because that's another discussion entirely. But £1 billion stadium, and I'm going to keep saying it because you don't buy a palatial garage and then stick an old Cortina in it, unless it's a collector's edition or something. The answer to Conte's creative midfielder quandary is undoubtedly Leicester City's James Maddison. He's English, which effortlessly he said with some effort, effortlessly steals the last breath from the lips of those mentally preparing themselves to be saddled with Harry Winks for yet another season. And I saw this morning online that Everton had tepid interest. That's called. Leeds United were also named. I think they were just thrown into the equation. Who in their right mind is desperate to pick up Harry Winks? Apart from bedwetting Tottenham fans that can't move on. As far as assists go, and here's some numbers, I mean actual numbers, this is something a guy can produce in the top flight. It isn't wishing, it isn't hoping. Oh, if we put a Spurs shirt on him and a cigar in his mouth, he might look successful. This is reality. As far as assists go, Maddison ranks very highly in the Premier League. Look at the company that he keeps in all of these charts. As far as goals scored are concerned, Maddison keeps equally excellent company. James's second assists for last season in the top flight were simply superb. And incidentally, a second assist is the last action of a player from a goal-scoring team prior to an assist by a teammate. Which again, you can say, oh yeah, was his second assist? What's a fourth assist? Cool your jets. There's no need to demean this stuff, okay? Because it's not about proving anything with numbers. What it is about is proving the involvement in positive activity, producing outcomes that produce goals. This guy is involved. He's up to his neck in it involved. When it comes to deep completions, James is up there with the best. And just to debunk the terminology again for you, a deep completion is a non-cross pass that is targeted to the zone within 20 metres of the opponent's goal. So you can see how involved this guy is. You can see how important he is. You can see why he's worth the money. He's not stood there going, yeah, mate, well, you know, it's not in my hands, 2 goals and 4 assists like some footballing pauper. Spurs have done good business this season. There's no two ways about it. But there's a phrase I use all the time, and anybody who's ever done business with me in the last decade will tell you. I use it and they don't like it. There's a hole in the boat, and before Conte got there was a hole in the boat. Levy watched the hole get bigger and bigger. 500 days under Pochettino. The fact that Christian Eriksen's gone to Manchester United. Listen, I didn't want him back at Spurs. I remember, okay? I'm not the guy that goes back to his ex. Well, I used to be, but I'm not anymore. I remember the bad times. I remember his head looking the other way. But the idea that you have a player who could be doing that for us, but he wasn't marshalled correctly, wasn't managed correctly, wasn't incentivised correctly. So he had to wander off like all the others wandered off, because this hasn't been run like a football club. It's not been run like a top flight football club. But mother knows best. Levy knows better. So there's plenty to think about there, but there isn't really. James Maddison, go and get him. Your move, Antonio. Good luck. Keep it on.